Okay, great. Yeah, so welcome everybody. Again, this is the EMDA 203. This is the Digital Interactive Foundations in our new remote delivery version. We're excited to see how this all plays out, and appreciate all your patience and ingenuity in figuring out how to navigate all these new systems and everything. So there's a few things maybe just up front as far as how we're going to be delivering the class and how to get access to certain materials that I'll sort of point you in the direction of. So I'm going to actually jump over to sharing screen here for a moment. Where did it go? Is it this one? Yes, that's the right one. Okay, so first off, obviously you found us via Zoom. We'll be using Zoom regularly for our Monday lecture times, which will happen during this 10:30 time slot. And then we will also be, as I mentioned, recording it and then uploading it to the Moodle page. If you want to see, normally on the Moodle page, those are going to be for each week. We have an area, so weeks 1 through 3, we're doing this intro to coding section. And there's these week 1 coding videos and tutorials. There will be a similar thing for week 2 and week 3. And that's where we'll post all of these videos from our Zoom lectures, as well as there's some already pre-made tutorials that we've made over the past couple of years. Those will be housed in that same link as well. So that's where to look for that. So Moodle has a bunch of great information on it. We have a few things up the front. So there's this syllabus to check out, and we can sort of look through that in a second. Also, there's a hello, how are you entrance survey. If you have a moment, just take a couple minutes to fill that out and submit that for us. It just gives a sense of some of your background from other classes and in preparation for this class. As far as other ways that we're going to be staying in touch, so as I mentioned, there's Zoom that we'll be using for this Monday session as well as Wednesday sessions, which are going to be more Q&A help forums with the individual instructors. And then each of us will have our own Zoom channel that you can dial into. So it'll just be 1 to 20 instead of 1 to 60 for help with any of the work that we're doing throughout the term. So those links are there, or will be there shortly if they're not. The other thing that we're trying out is we have a Discord server going on for this class as well. We have a Discord server for a lot of the creative arts classes going on this term. So the link is available here. It's also available on the Moodle page, or yeah, on the welcome email we sent out. And that will shoot you over here. I don't know, maybe Miles, do you want to say anything? Just sort of talk through what the ethos of the Discord server is?
Yeah, so I think the Discord server is, I first got on Discord a couple years ago. Oops, I'm getting some feedback there somehow. But I got on Discord a couple years ago as part of the Game Development Club, which is the student-run club where people collaborate to make their own stuff. And it was great, you know, because people just took it and ran with it. I mean, I guess people who are on video, how many people here are already using Discord, right? I mean, a lot of people are already, yeah. So I see a couple people are already using it, you know. For gaming, a really great platform. So I think it's going to be for you guys to stay in touch with each other, to make connections, and to this, as people are saying these days. And Discord will be also a place where you can ask questions, and you know, David and Nick and I, or Rad or Willow, can see those questions, but also you guys can see them. And so a lot of times you'll be able to answer each other's questions too. So I'm excited to have the Discord part of this going, which is something we would do anyway, even when we're post-corona, you know, which I'm looking forward to. So Discord is a good resource for everybody. So yeah, anything else on that?
Great. Yeah, I mean, just so when you hop on in, it depends on your link. Maybe I forget if the link is directly for the EMDA 203 section or if it's for the general creative arts. We created a
Yeah, just to
large.
I can clarify that, right?
Yep.
So when the invite that we have on the Moodle page is for the SOU Creative Arts server, which is all of this stuff on the left. So if you're new to Discord, you're automatically a part of all of these conversations here. And I think we've gotten the default set up so that you're not being notified to death. But there's also a way you can, turn off the audio and all that kind of stuff for notifications. But you can opt into certain types of notifications if you want to. So the one that David showing there is our class server is the EMDA 203 interactive text server, and you can see there's already some action going on there as far as the text server. And then we also have a voice channel down. These are called channels, actually. Excuse me. That's the EMDA 203 interactive channel, and then down below that is the EMDA 203 voice channel. Which, hey, I'm on that, but I'm muted, so that's good. Down there, so that way, we're going to explore this week as a way to have as an alternate way to deliver, to kind of connect, maybe over the lectures as well. So,
Yeah, great. Cool. It looks like they're
so yeah,
on
you're
the
a part of
here.
that when you.
Yeah, so it looks like we're seeing that there are a few people that are having issues getting onto the Zoom session here. So maybe we can hopefully help debug that over the while we're going on here. Michaela looks like she's helping out there.
I'll send a message out and maybe just send a message out on Discord saying, hey, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't stress out if you're not in.
And then we'll record
Zoom today. We'll get that all taken care of.
Yep.
We got you. So we'll make it work.
Okay. Great. So yeah, moving on. So those are the two main things. We got Discord going, and we have Zoom happening as well. Miles mentioned Willow and Rad are also available to help with some of the programming questions that may be coming up throughout the term. I guess actually before we do that, maybe we should introduce ourselves. A lot of you guys know us, but not everyone, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sort of forgot to do that at the very beginning. So my name is David Bethel. I'm a faculty member here in the Creative Arts. I've been teaching in.
Do you want to stop the screen share, David?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we can just show our faces.
Yeah. So I've been teaching in a lot of different areas. My background is in music and music composition, music technology, and then using that sort of technological side of things to pivot to working in a lot of different interdisciplinary approaches to arts and technology. And yeah, I'm excited to be working with you guys in this class here today. Who else? Miles.
Great.
Who are you?
Hey, I'm Miles. Nice to see. Who am I? I don't know anymore after all this, but nice to see everybody. I've had several of you guys in classes before, which is really cool, and I'm excited to meet the new folks who I haven't had in classes before. And my background is in painting, drawing, animation, a lot of 3D modeling, animation, comics, concept art, that kind of thing. And yeah, I'm excited about this. We'll talk more about this as the quarter goes on, but a lot of us here, we're all here kind of as artists first, usually, or creative types. And so coding and programming is not necessarily our first language, but it's a language that we've kind of learned from the artistic perspective, and that's what we're excited about here. So it's good to see everybody. And cheerio. Who's next?
Yeah, so I'm
Nick.
Nick Ortson, and this is I guess this is my 4th year teaching 203 or helping out with 203, and I really like the material of the class. My background is I'm kind of have interested in sound design. So if any folks are interested in that direction, talk to me. That's one of my areas of interest. And, I'm really, this is a challenge here, but I am excited about the material for the class. And, this has always been one of my favorite classes to work on. So I'm really looking forward to getting to know everybody and getting into this material. So it's great to be here. I look forward to getting to know you all better.
Nice. Yeah, and so I think so as all sort of alluded here, the class is really going to be focused on really sort of how do you work with digital media in a contemporary interactive environment. So ways of having media that's going to have the possibility to be changing, responding to input, all the things that you sort of expect to see, especially when you're working with, say, like games and game technology. But a lot of the technologies can really be applied to a lot of different outputs, not just gaming. But we do take really gaming sort of as a central sort of theme here because it's familiar to everyone and it's a really sort of fun output. So we'll be focusing the first couple weeks on just laying the groundwork of some very basic computer programming skills that are going to serve as sort of the foundation for being able to do more advanced things. And then after week 3, from then on, we'll be working on one larger independent gaming project that will be able to show off all those programming skills, but also let you really bring in all of the additional skills in like design and illustration and sound design and things like that you've been working on in some of the other foundations courses, or maybe in your own just sort of personal practice, and bring those in to really design an experience that's going to be a unique sort of gaming environment. So that's really the goal. We're looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with that. And maybe Miles, I don't know, now might be a good time to sort of show some of those and the trajectory. What are we headed towards?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Give me a minute on that.
Okay.
I had just a 1 second here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go.
Yeah.
It'll be great.
So we'll show a little overview of some of the directions that we're headed, and then we'll be jumping into a little bit of the environment that we're going to be using, which is called CodePen, that we'll be using for at least the first 3 or 4 weeks, which is a great sort of online kind of coding development site. And we'll be doing that for all of our exercises that are going to be happening over the first few weeks. And then we'll jump into really demoing
Cool.
some coding.
Cool. So let's see. So this is kind of the demo that we did for last year, and we'll be making this kind of available for everybody. So I have our hero here, so it fits on the screen. Yeah, and you can shoot things. You can merrily. It's a very low stress game. He's kind of like, he's impervious. He can just go around and do what he wants while he's listening to emo kind of ambient music. So that's the basic idea. It's a very simple kind of fun, and we get more and more of these targets coming out. I'll turn the sound down here. And, but we're generating, we're making all of the art ourselves. We're making all of the code ourselves, and we're doing all the programming ourselves as well. So I think when we get to level 7, there's a big power up. I should have kind of had that ready because it's pretty fun to power up, So we're going through all the basic steps to making a complete online, interactive game that you're writing literally from the ground up. We're not using any kind of pre-made structures. We're using one library that makes it a little easier for us to do imagery and some anime stuff, but really it's stuff that you could do even completely from HTML, Canvas, and JavaScript. So JavaScript is our end, and we're going to be learning that starting today, really. So yeah, so there's our little demo there, and I guess we'll get to the power up some other day. I don't know. So,
Sounds
but
good.
pretty fun. So you can see we get more and more characters. Everything's being generated automatically, all the animation and all that kind of stuff. So it's great as a lead into doing things like advanced animation, like if you take the animation class to learn how, this is what we would call procedural animation, which is all done through code. So, in other traditional animation, we do everything kind of hand done, frame by frame. I think this is the power. Yeah, look at that. Whee! So now he gets to really kind of start taking charge of things. So pretty fun. Yeah, so you're writing all of this from scratch. So you're not using anything pre-made. So you can take over the world here. Cool. Oh, wow. Things are getting out of control now. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Great. Yeah. And so, and while these things might seem like a whole bunch of things going on at once, we're really going to sort of break things down step by step. So if you've had some coding experience, great, that will serve you well, I'm sure, in whatever language you may have worked with. If you had no coding experience, that's perfectly fine. We don't expect you to come in with anything, and we'll be starting from very basic things on just code syntax, and then eventually it'll be like placing an image. Place one image here, or let's change the position of that image. Things like that, just little incremental things that are going to be able to build up to be able to make all of that stuff that's happening really sort of be possible. And yeah, actually, and let's see, it was just one other quick version of this of the same sort of thing. Here's one other one that I had completed here. This is called Petri. So it's like, I think most of the games that we're developing are this idea of like a top-down, either object collection or object avoidance or both kind of a gaming environment. So that you have that sort of idea that it's largely top-down. Some other options are possible, but it's just an easy framework to work with here. So here in this, everyone's just collecting the little amoebas and going around, you get them, and it eats them. Not sure how well the sound's translating over here, but this might be particularly applicable in our environment these days. Let's go.
Destroy right.
Destroy the.
Let's solve this thing.
One more. Yay!
Yes.
I won.
Yes.
Okay. So. Okay, so let's see. Are we ready to go ahead and jump over to the coding stuff? I think so, unless there are any other
let's do it.
Logistic things you can think of.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't know if Willow and Rad are on here, but it'd be good to introduce them because I think with learning how to code, I was thinking about it. My son is actually majoring in computer science up at U of O right now. And I was telling him, it's like, well, he was getting, when you first get set up to start coding, if you've never done it before, like I remember I bought a book on C++ like 25, 30 years ago. And it's like, I'm going to learn how to do this. And then it was before the internet. And I couldn't even get started. I didn't even know how to set up a coding place. So it was that kind of stumped me. And so our assistants, so David and Nick and I are all here obviously for you, but we've got some really fantastic teaching assistants that we're lucky to have, and they're great. So they can help you guys out with all kinds of stuff. Because I think don't be shy in asking for help, because when we're all isolated like this, we kind of need each other more than ever. So anyway, these guys are going to be great. So
yeah.
Are you guys live?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know if you guys can hear.
There's Rad. Hey, Rad.
Howdy.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. So I'm Rad. This is, I don't know, coding is just sort of like my bread and butter as far as EMDA goes. I'm a senior in the EMDA program. And so basically just anything from the most basic to, more of what you want to do as far as like going further. I know just sort of like the basic structures of how to get things done. So just any questions you have, you can shoot them by me. It's good to go.
Yeah, awesome. Great. And I think
Thank you,
Willow,
Rad.
yeah, I think, yeah, someone just mentioned that. I think Willow is having problems getting connected with the Zoom meeting this time around. But Willow is also
Okay.
senior in
Okay.
EMDA, and she is double major with EMDA and computer science, and has some solid programming skills to be able to help out. I know with Willow we have some posted hours that are up on the web page, on the Moodle page. And what we'll do is just have you email her. Her email address is right there, and let her know a couple of good times within those windows when you might want to meet up, and what's the best way you want to meet up, whether it's just as a through Zoom, through Skype, through Discord, or other options of getting in connection. And both of these will be, working with Rad and with Willow are going to be in addition to our regularly scheduled Wednesday sessions, which will be for, led by each of the three faculty members. Will be open forums, Q&A, really sort of problem solving, jumping onto your screen and helping out if you have some programming issues, etc. So, yeah, great. There's lots of help around. So that's
one of the nice things. Yeah. Just one more thing, David, that I think that we're excited about having that ability to kind of, and Rad and Willow and everybody can do this, is to kind of give you direct help on your screen, which again is something that we'll incorporate once we go live again and come back to the meetup space. It's a really nice way to learn programming, because programming, you can get screwed up by the smallest, dinkiest little typo, and that can be really frustrating. So now you don't have to suffer in silence. And so we'll be kind of monitoring the Discord. Should be a good place for that, to get help. So if you get stuck, don't keep it to yourself. Share the love or the suffering.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump over, and we'll start looking at a little bit of the code world that we're going to be working with. To start with, I just want to show you sort of the structure of how this will be working each week. So right now we have populated, and it looks like a ton of work, but don't panic, it's really not a ton of work. We have these 9 little code basics assignments that we're asking you to do this week. Each one of them is very, very incremental and very, very small tasks. So it's basically like one worksheet with a series of 9 questions on it, something like that would be another way of structuring it. But so for each of these, what you'll do is you'll click on the link to go into it in Moodle, and each of them are going to be structured very similarly. So it tells you what the goal is for that particular assignment, the series of instructions, which are exactly the same for all of them, with the exception of the link. The link will be different on each. And then at the bottom, a series of helpful hints that are just sort of reminders about key functions or coding tools that you'll want to be able to use in completing these assignments. So check those out. Some of them are a little more advanced than this one's just a very simple one. Some other ones have more advanced sort of step-by-step tutorial ideas in there as well. So let me sort of walk through this instructions on these. Of what you'll do is first is you'll open up the template in CodePen. So if you just click on the link here, if you have already created a CodePen account, it should open it up for you over here. You might need to create the account first if you haven't done that already. That will bring you up here. I'm going to talk through the CodePen environment in just a second, so that once we're here, we're kind of landed here and stay there. Then you will, well, yeah, I guess maybe I'll stay over there now. Okay, so once we're here, there's a few things to sort of note about the environment. And you may see it this way. You may see it in a different way. There is a change view option up on the top, and you can see that there's these editor layouts and a number of different layout schemes that you can use. I think default, it might go to something like this, which is up across the top where you have all the code. And you'll notice that there are 3 main panels, and you can drag them over so that you can get access to all of them. There's HTML, CSS, and JS. These are 3 different languages that all work together to create most web pages that you see online today. So HTML is the most basic one. It serves as kind of the wrapper that holds everything together, and and displays images, and you can do a lot with HTML. For this class, we're going to really just use it as a wrapper to hold code that we're creating in JavaScript. CSS is one. It's where the cascading style sheets is one that we're really not going to be talking about at all this term, but it's ways to style the way that things display. So you might have a paragraph of text in your HTML, and then you use CSS to style what font it's going to use, how it's going to be displayed, and you can actually do quite a bit of complex stuff, but we're just not touching CSS this term. And then lastly, JS, which is abbreviation for JavaScript. And JavaScript is going to be where we're going to be spending most of the time this term. So much so that for these code basics, at least for week 1, probably all week 2 and week 3 as well, you can just slide all the way over and not really touch HTML and just be working in this JavaScript environment. And just understand that this JavaScript environment is being housed within a larger framework of HTML. And when we get to working on your individual projects, we'll have to sort of start understanding that a little bit more explicitly, but this is enough to know for now. So you can use the view layout that works best for you. The main things to know are that, so code is going to be over here. On the right-hand side, what's currently all white space is going to be like the web page. That's going to be where you're going to see the results of things, or if you wanted to display an image or display some text, that's most commonly where that's going to go. That's what's known as the HTML document. And then also another important thing that we will occasionally be using is if you go down to the bottom left, there is a little tab called Console. And if you click on that, it will bring up a window down here that says Console. And this is an area that's a lot of errors will pop up. So if there's something that the browser is having a problem compiling some of the code, running the code properly, errors will show up there. As well, you can send messages to yourself there that the regular web user would not see, and that can be really helpful in the debugging process. So you can say, oh, I have this very complex coding going on, but something's happening, and I want to make sure that we got through this particular step. So we can get to that step in code and say console.log, which means log something to the console, and it will show up there. So we'll start using all of these features in just a moment. So some of the other sort of logistical things on CodePen to be aware of is when you come into here, what you should first do is, it's a funny expression, but it's called fork the pen. So you're supposed to fork this, which means make your own branch version of this CodePen. The pen is just sort of like this playground area, the sandbox where you can play with code. CodePen just calls them pens. By forking it, you make your own copy of it that's going to be stored on your user account with CodePen. And then when you make changes, you can save them, and those will get saved. You can come in, so you could get tripped up because you can come in and start editing one of these templates that I've created and do all the work that you want. That's great, but you're not going to be able to save it because it's not your own pen. So you won't be able to then upload your completed version. So the first step when you get in here is go down here to where it says fork. Everyone see where that is? It's on the bottom, kind of towards the right. Click on fork, and then it will copy it into a new thing, and it should say pen forked up on the top. It probably will keep the same name and all that, and that's fine. You can change the name if you wanted to say like basics, my completed version, something like that. You can do that just so you're clear that yes, this is my version that I'm working on, rather than the template that I'm not going to be able to save. You also see that you'll have the save button option. So once you've done that, let's say you've done a few of these things and you want to go back and look around. If you click on just your user icon in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see this dashboard. And the dashboard is the main one that you're going to be using here. You can also use it to jump in and create a new pen from scratch, or a new collection, which is a group of pens. All that's fine to do there. For right now, you're probably not going to have to do that unless you're wanting to just do some exploration on your own. So, but the dashboard, if we click on that, is going to pull up all of the pens that you have saved to your account. So you'll see in here, I have a whole bunch of them because I've authored all the templates here. And including the one that I just did now. So I forked that 1.1 version, and I have my version to work on with that. Does that make largely make sense there? Yep. Send a question maybe over in the comment, or jump on in if you're or if you have a question if it doesn't make sense. So now let's say. I'm just going to go through the logistics of like I doing my thing, and then I'm going to turn it in, and then we'll work through the coding. So let's see, I got my my pen here that I'm going to be working on. Another quick thing you can do is if you had all these tabs up in different ways, if you just double click on the one you want, it will auto shrink the others, and then you can just focus in on the JavaScript one. So let's say that I had to do something down here. I'm going to do something so that it will show up. Document.write, and I'll explain this in a second. Hello world. So I type that in. You see that things over in the right auto start to populate and sort of auto execute. They show up in this space here. And so now hello world, this document.write hello world is going to show up over here. Great. That's all working. Let's say that's all I had to do for the assignment, and that's actually pretty close to all you need to be able to do for this first one. What you would do is you would save it, and then after it's saved, you come up and copy the link up from the web page up here, and you know that it's yours also because it will have your name as a part of the address, like whatever username you created here as a part of the address, and then a direct link to this pen. Copy that, and then when you go back into your, into your assignment, that's what you're going to upload when you add your submission. You're going to just upload that link. And let me actually, if you want to be extra nice, when you come in and paste that in here, oh, look, great, it auto-populated as a link. Sometimes it doesn't, and if you just select it and then paste it again in as a link, it just means that then we can actually just click it. We don't have to do any copy paste stuff when we're grading it. So that is all you need to do for each of these assignments. You don't need to say, here's my thing. You don't need to give an explanation. It's simply posting the link, save changes, and submit. All right. So now that's the basic structure of working with CodePen, and that will work for all the assignments that we're going to work with. What I'm going to spend some time now doing is just demonstrating and talking through some of the basic aspects of coding in JavaScript. And remember, you can always come back to this video. This video will be posted online, but you can also check in with us, ask questions on the Wednesday sessions, ask questions on Discord, and also you'll find that there is an EMDA Coding Basics Google Slides deck here that's linked to on the Moodle page as well. And it doesn't really have the contextual information, but it has demonstrations of all the basic sort of ideas that we're going to be talking through today and over the next few weeks as well. So that's a great resource. It's good to have all these things just in a number of different forms. So if it doesn't make sense one way, you can look at it another way, and one of those ways hopefully will click for you. Great. So let's see here. I just want to pull up that. Okay, great. So very first thing I want to do is actually just reiterate what I just did. And so it's just the simplest way to start getting things to show up both into our document as well as into the console. So the way that we do this is by writing a very simple function. And a function is simply just something that's going to complete a task for us. So in this case, we're doing a thing called going into a document. So we say document.write parentheses, and then in quotations what we want to write. And I'll just put in the hello world again. And then at the end of the line, we have a semicolon. So there's a whole bunch of things as a part of this that you want to take note of. So let me just talk through what's happening. So here it says go to the document, which is in this case, it's this HTML document. And this dot, we'll see dots a lot in JavaScript, and they can be used to do a number of different things. But primarily think of it like the dot equals do, dot equals do. So here it's like do a particular function, and the function it's going to do is the write function. So what that means is that the document, HTML document, has a JavaScript function associated with it called write. So if you tell it document.write, it's going to know what to do with whatever information you're going to pass to it. So in here, a function also, you'll always know a function because it's going to be defined in part by having these parentheses, open and close parentheses. That's a way that you know something is a function. So here I'm calling it function, but if I called it something like add things, this hasn't been defined, but that might be a function that we create. And it has these parentheses that are going to tell it that this is a function. It's going to do something. And we can put things in there to tell it what to do. In this case, we're saying what text we want to display. And we're wanting to display this hello world. So why isn't it working? Is it just because I have an error here? There we go. Okay, because those other things hadn't been defined. It was confusing things. So other thing to note in here is just be careful. You want to have these parentheses or quotation marks around what you're going to type in here. So if what you're displaying is text, like you normally, like hello world, any sort of traditional normal text, what we call that in coding is a string. So it's a string of characters. So a number of characters that are strung all together into one thing that we call a string. So that is a string, and they are defined here, or we're saying that hello world is a string by putting it in quotation marks. If I were to take those quotation marks out, it would no longer be a string, and it's instead now the code is assuming that that might be something that you had named elsewhere. That's like a variable or some data that you had stored somewhere, and it's going to go looking for something called hello world. And it's not going to find it because I haven't defined that, and there isn't just anything default like that. So that's just a way we define things as a string like that. There we go. And that should be back and working again. Awesome. So you can put whatever you want in there. Document.write. It doesn't have to be hello world. Blah, blah. All these things will start showing up. And you'll start noticing also some particular sort of idiosyncrasies about how things show up. You'll notice that it doesn't by default create a new line. Things are just going to be appended to each other in HTML. So if you wanted to have a new line created, you have to tell it actively to do so. And one way of doing that is like this, which looks clunky, but it's what you do. So in here, we're creating this. This is what HTML is going to look like. Everything's bracketed by these open and closed carets. It's called a tag. And this is a break, like a line break tag that's being inserted, so it knows to hit enter and go down to the next line. Yeah. So that makes sense. We got some document.write going on. Next thing to check in on is console.log, which is going to look exactly the same, except we're not going to see it. Okay, so I put this in here. I do put a semicolon at the end of each line that you want to execute. Oftentimes it's kind of forgiving if you don't have it, but you really want to get in good practice about being very particular about each little step with code, because one little wrong thing and it might not execute at all. So a semicolon just tells the computer, okay, we're at the end of the line of code execute that line of code and then move on to the next line. So I did this console log. Hello, I'm hidden, but I'm not seeing anything. So the reason is because we're logging to the console in the same way that we were writing to the document. So we got to pull up our console to take a look at it. So I'm going to click down the bottom left to get to the console. And now that should pop up down here. And we can see it happening. And there's some other stuff going on here as well. And this is a little bit awkward thing, admittedly, about CodePen. Because it is an environment that is constantly updating, so that it is able to give you a live view of what is happening with your code. That means that you'll see here it made a couple of different writes or logs to the console as I was typing. And that's because it updated before I was done. So normally, if you were working in other environments, it would be just once that's executed and you run the code, it would just say, hello, I'm hidden one time. But no worries, just sort of recognize that that's going to be there and look for the latest one. You might also want to look and see if there are any errors. There are some errors that were up here that I've all resolved at this point. So I can clear the console. I clear the console, and then if I come in and just sort of retype one of these parts in here, it should update for me. Yeah. Maybe if I do it here. Well, it's seeming to fail on that part, but no worries. We'll figure out a more consistent way for doing that.
Try hitting save, maybe.
Maybe hit save. Good question. Good call. And saved. Hey, nice call. Miles got it. So by clicking save, it went through all of its stuff and updated the most recent version and executed that here. So awesome. Great. So again, document.write is going to be for anything that you want the world to see, that you're going to be displaying as a part of your project. Console.log is really for stuff that you want to see yourself, or if there were notes, if like you're collaborating on a project and you wanted to be sending it to another collaborator, you can keep stuff hidden in there, but they can see, oh, this is what's happening. These are some notes on what's got to happen, all that kind of stuff. Awesome. So some other things just to sort of take note of in terms of that, sending information back and forth, or having stuff that's just for your own information, is using comments. So comments are ways of making code that doesn't execute, but there's words there that you can keep track of what's going on. And with JavaScript, there's two ways to create comments. I already did one up here. The quickest way is just a double slash, and then whatever you type is a comment. This is a comment. And comments are not going to affect anything with the code. It's only for our information. So it can be a way of sort of talking through the code, documenting what's where. It can be used also to make parts of code not execute. So if you're debugging something and you're saying, oh, something's going on with this line of code here, I'm not sure what it is, and I can put comments at the beginning of that and make comment out that line of code. And now that line of code is no longer going to work. And then if I just delete the comment slashes, then it will execute again. So if I do that up here, we can see it. If I take out hello world disappeared now. And then, but I still have the blah blah going. And now if I delete those comment slashes, hello world should reappear. Yep, nice. If you're doing larger sections that you want to have a comment of, and you'll notice this on a lot of my instructions on the CodePen templates, is you'll notice that you can go / and then anything you type in there on more than one line is all going to be part of that comment. And then you close that comment by doing */. So anything that's inside of those two marks are going to be comments. It doesn't execute as code, or but then anything outside of it still does. So I can come back in here, document.write, still working. And then that stuff we can see up there is, as it says, still working. Okay, so awesome. That's document.write, that's console log, and that's the basics of comments. So the next thing I want to do is talk about variables. So variables are places in ways to store information in memory for the computer. So a variable, and oftentimes we're going to use the keyword var, V-A-R, to start defining them. It's really a place to hold almost anything that you could imagine code holding. So it can hold a name, it can hold a number. So a name would be called a string. It can hold a number. Eventually it can hold lists. It can hold like a whole long list of names or numbers. It can hold images. It can hold behaviors. It can hold all sorts of complex things inside of a variable. So the variable really is just sort of a space in memory that has a name associated with it that you're then able to refer back to. So let's see how you can name them and how we can get this and use them. So there's two main parts that we talk about in making variables, or in making and using them. So there's declaring a variable, declare a variable, and then there is, what did we call it? Instantiating a variable. There was a better word for it that I just forgot, but maybe Miles or Nick can remember it for me while I'm declaring our variable here. So we have a declaring a variable. We say var equals, and let's just say ours are going to be character. Or sorry, no, var.
Initializing a variable.
Thank you, initializing. So we have var character. So now we have a space somewhere in the computer's memory called character. It doesn't have anything associated with it yet. We can then initialize that character, or I'm going to actually be more explicit about this right now. Oops, I'm going to call it character name. So now we've created this thing called character name, and now I can initialize it by saying character name gets, so equals, and we will give it a string that's going to be sure, Lubmishk. That's not what I meant to type, but it's better than what I was going to type. Lubmishk is our character. So what we've done is we declared a variable. We say var character name. Somewhere exists this thing called character name. Then we've said character name, and we've set it equal to some value, and this value is a string here. So we can also do this all in one step. So we can say var character demeanor equals kindly. So this is going to be some kindly character here. So you can see that here I declared the variable and I instantiated it, or initialized it, thank you, all in one single line like that. Typically, that's what I end up doing for a lot of my variables, is initializing them at the same time. But there's situations later on that will want that you might just declare a variable so it's accessible, and then you don't even put anything in it until much later in the code. Okay, so let's see how we can use this kind of thing. So now I have these variables. If I come in and say document.write, let's see, I'm going to say, I'll just do it like this. Character name. Okay, and in order for us to see it a little clearer, I'm going to do this on a new line, and I'll actually comment out all this stuff. There's a cool little shortcut if you're commenting a bunch of things. Select all the lines of code, and then hit Command/, or I guess it's a likely Control/ on the PC, and it will make all of those commented out. So that's kind of a nice thing there. Okay, so now this should just be the part we're working on right here. Great. So what I did was I did document.write, and instead of putting something as a string in here, I then typed in the name of the variable directly. So character name, not in quotation marks. That means that we have whatever character name was initialized to be or defined to be is going to replace that here and shows up into our document. Yeah. So if I were to, just to clarify, if I were to put that in quotation marks, I keep switching those, we'll see that it displays character name because it's using that as a string, not as the variable. So you got to be careful. If you're using it as a variable, make sure it's not in quotations. Awesome. Now, if we had not initialized our variable, let's see what would happen. Okay, it says undefined. And it's like, I didn't type undefined anywhere. That means that the variable has not been defined. The value has not been associated with it. So when I told it to print it, to write it to the document, it says, I don't know what it is, it's undefined. And so that's why I put that up there. Okay, so if I comment that back in, and now it should update. Awesome, so we're using a variable to then fill this in. Right now it seems it's a little odd. It's like, well, you could have just written that word right here, yes, but eventually as we get more and more complex, that power of leveraging variables is going to become more and more obvious. Awesome. So, so some other things we can do is document .write is we can start what's called concatenating strings, which is kind of a crazy way of saying you're adding things together. And so we can make a larger string here that so it says things a little bit more clearly. So if I said document.write and I say my character's name is, and I'm just going to leave a space, and then I'm going to add character name. Now we can see that what's happening up here is that I wrote in as a string, this my character's name is, and then I added to it the variable name character name. So that's a nice way to be able to get some of that, like joining the variable with some predefined text. So now if I were to go back up and change my character name to something else, there we go. Now it's coming back in here and populating that in. All right, so that's some variables, writing them and sort of adding them together. If we had some, let's do a little bit of some number stuff. Var character age equals 50. And so I'm defining a new character. We'll make our age or sprightly 22. So now if we come down here and then we can also display that kind of information very easily. I'll just copy and paste. My character's age is character age. And then if I were to do the same thing, and let's pop it down here. Let's say in 10 years, my character's age is, character's age, let's see if this is gonna work. I'm not 100% sure if it'll work the way we want it to or not. What's going on? Some errors.
You're missing a space on line 31 in character.
Thank you. Nice catch. Yep. And I also clicked on the little exclamation on here, and it pulled up some error and said character age is not defined. Yep, I spelt it with no H. Thanks. Good catch. Awesome. Okay, so now we see some funkiness. One thing is working sort of as expected, one thing is not working as expected. So that we have, so it added things, it added the text, and then it added number 22 for the age, but then it just appended 10, which feels kind of strange, right? You think 22 plus 10 should be, what, 32? The reason is because you have to kind of tell JavaScript, are you adding like numbers or are you adding like words? Are you appending or are you actually adding? And so since we started by adding like words here, it just continued in that format. So in order to do what we want it to do, what we'll want to do is say, create something new, which is going to be, say, var new age equals character, and I'll try and spell it right this time, character age plus 10. And now I'm going to, in our updated version here, I'm going to delete the 10, and I'm going to put in our new variable of new age. All right, awesome. So now we see 32, it did the adding as we expected. So that means that we have a couple different ways in these two lines sort of highlighting this is an addition that's happening based on numbers. And this in here is a type of addition that we would call, I think technically it's like concatenating, where it's more like appending those things rather than adding like numbers. Great, okay. And of course you can imagine there's all sorts of other functions and operators. So there's adding, there's subtracting, there's multiplying. So a couple of those things, just so you know, add, subtract, multiply is just the asterisk in coding, and divide is the slash. Those are the main ones. There's also a modulus, which occasionally you'll get into, which is like the remainder thing. Yeah, all those can be done for any sort of numerical things. And numerical operations can be completed on variables, but they could also be completed on just numbers. So if I said var sum equals whatever, some big number plus 10, it's just going to do that calculation and set that equal to sum. All right, so that brings me to one other thing here to mention about how the sort of the difference, or it comes up a little bit when we're dealing with operators and dealing with variables, which is this equals sign. And just to start noticing it, because as we move on, this equals is going to be used in a couple different ways. Right now, a single equals like this it's really an assignment operator. It's going to assign a value to something. So what that means is it's going to take whatever the result of the right-hand side is, whatever that result is, and it's going to assign sum to that value. And same with all these other things, it's going to assign the value of character age plus 10 to the variable new age. And that assignment is a little different than what we'll see later. Sometimes we'll start seeing double equals, which is used in if-then type of statements. So comparisons that you're doing. So if you say like, if x is equal to 10, then do something. And I'm not going to talk through all that yet. We'll be getting into that next week. But here you see you use this double equals, and that means, is it equal to, like if x is equal to 10, if the statement is true, then do something. And that's different than single equals, which is really this assignment. It's taking the values that are here and it's assigning it to here. Another shorthands with that is like single equals is gets. So if you're reading from left to right, it's like the variable new age gets the result of character age plus 10. That's another way to sort of put that into words. Okay, anything I'm missing here on variables or and sort of adding, subtracting, that kind of things that you, Miles or Nick, can think of? And I see there's a bunch of chat things going on. Hopefully maybe someone else can be following that in case, yeah, hey, Miles is pasting all sorts of great stuff over there. Yeah.
Yeah, that equal sign thing is huge, really. I mean, that make sure about the equal sign as it's a command, basically. And you're saying make the thing on the left of the equal sign equal to the thing on the right of the equal sign. So it's a command, it's a verb. It's like do this, you're telling it to do it. So it's nothing like we would use it in math, for example. So it takes a while to get used to, and I guarantee you probably everyone here is going to make a mistake or 7 with that. I still make that mistake all the time.
Yeah.
So just heads up on that.
Yeah, so here's a great example of that, where it gets kind of tricky. And let me put a version down here. So a new little document write thing here. Our sum is, okay, so we're going to take sum. I'm going to say sum equals 0. So what I'm doing now is we'll see that one thing that I've done here is up here I defined or declared sum and set it equal to this value. Later on in my code here, I am, I'll comment this out, is that I'm saying sum now gets the value of 0. And we'll see that now I'm writing it to the document, sum equal, our sum is now 0. So you'll see that what I had here overrides what was there previously. So I've taken a new thing and put it into our sum. And one of the things that becomes clear when we're dealing with this equal thing is if we start incrementing things, like how it's different than regular math. So like sum equals, let's say sum plus 1. Now that's a statement that in regular math is just, it's like impossible. It just doesn't work. It's like 1 equals 1 plus 1. No, that just, the math of it doesn't work. But the programming logic of it does work, which is simply saying that there's a variable named sum, and we're going to assign it with the value of whatever the current value of sum is, plus 1. So it's going to say, what's the current value of sum? Well, it's 0, and we're going to add 1 to 0 and assign that to sum. So now sum has been updated. In this case, it's been incremented by 1, and we see that it displays our sum is 1. So that's one of those differences between math and programming logic here. There's a cool shorthand version of this, actually 2 different versions. We can say sum plus equals 1, and that takes whatever sum is and adds 1 to it. And there's yet another way to do it, sum plus plus. And that increments everything by 1. And you'll see here now our sum is all the way up to 3 because it started at 0, then it's 1, then it's 2, then it's 3. So these are 3 different ways that all are doing the exact same thing. They're different ways of incrementing a value. This bottom one is really only usable if you're wanting to increment by 1. These other ones have more flexibility, so you can plus equals by some other value. So if you, let's say, imagine you had a character that was moving left to right or right to left on the stage, and its speed was associated by like every frame it updated its location by a certain number of pixels that it had to move left to right. So if it was moving 1 pixel every frame, it might be moving at this rate. But then if you update it so that every 5 frames, it's going to, or every frame it's moving 5 pixels, it will move faster. It will appear to move faster. So that here we could do that kind of plus equals 5 or sum plus 5. are doing the same sort of thing. So these have a little more flexibility, but this plus plus is just the quick and dirty simple version if you're just wanting to increment something once. And there's versions for subtraction as well. So you can have the minus minus version for decrementing, as it's called. There's also like minus equals. There's also going to be times equals and divide equals, although typically we haven't used those as much, but they're there and available to you. So those are really good for using on things that eventually are going to be incrementing, which we'll do a lot of when we start moving things, moving characters around. Awesome. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to covering most of the things that we're needing to for today on coding. Let me check and see. We did hello world stuff. We did variables. We did operators and comments. Yep, we're down to the last thing. So the last thing, and we're going to be introducing the idea of this today. We'll be coming back to it because it's a pretty important and it's pretty powerful one, pretty powerful concept, which is dealing with functions. And we've seen some functions already. We have these document.writes are functions, character or console log is a function. But now we'll start working on being able to define a little bit of our own functions. So a function is really something that's going to be able to do something. I'm just going to start with some of these simple adding things that we've been doing because it's just an easy, quick demo. So let's first of all say function. So function is a keyword that means I'm going to start defining a function. And I'm going to call it add things because we can think of what that's going to be. And for right now, I'm just going to do the very basic type of a function, which is going to look like this. And then document.write new sum. I'm doing this in a little backwards format, which I shouldn't have done, but var new sum equals 5 plus 6. Okay, so this is a very simple but kind of silly function, but here it is. So I declared a new variable, new sum. It equals 5 plus 6, and then we're going to write that up. So I did it. I don't have any errors, but I don't see anything. And that's because there's two really important parts about working with a function. First is going to be defining it, or declaring the function. Defining the function, I think, is usually used. And then the other is going to be calling the function. And you call the function when you want to actually use it. So I have now defined my function here, but I haven't said anywhere that, okay, let's use the function. The way you use a function is by using its name, so add things, and then you give the parentheses open and closed. And there we go. That is that's our function. I'm going to give it on a new line. Actually, I'm going to comment out some of this other stuff. Okay, there we go. So this is how we have this 11 down here. I'm going to document out or comment out everything else. So we're just seeing what we want to see. Great. Okay, so the document.write is happening through this add things portion. So now let's make it a little more interesting, so it's something that's going to be more useful for us. So let's say we wanted to add two things together. We can, in these parentheses, in defining our function, we can say thing 1, thing 2. These names are I think they're called parameters. Or there might be another term for it. Someone can hit me up with the better answer, but parameter works fine. And these are arbitrary names that you create that are going to be used within your function. So if I have thing 1 and thing 2, now I can say var sum equals new sum of thing 1 plus thing 2. And then we're going to show that same thing. It says NaN up here, not a number. So that's a common error that you'll get when you're adding things. In this case, especially because it's two things that haven't been defined. So an undefined plus undefined equals, I don't know, it's not a number. But it's whatever it is, it's not a number. So that's because when we call our function down here, you have to pass it these values to put in the place of these temporary variables, thing one and thing two. So under add things, I can say add things, and let's just say 10, comma, 3. And now when it updates, perfect, it's working, 13. So by calling the function, it goes to the add things function here, and it goes in, it takes this 10, and it uses it in the place of thing 1. It takes this 3, and it uses it in place of thing 2. Then it does a simple adding of thing 1 and thing 2, and writes it to the document. So this should work if we do the same thing again, but with strings. So if I said now hello space and world, we'll see that it's working now by adding those strings together as well, because there's nothing in the function that says it only is going to work with numbers. It can work with either of those. Awesome. So we'll start. That's a good sort of basic beginning of functions. Eventually, we'll be able to make functions become really powerful. They can do a lot of good things for us. But the key thing is really just being able to encapsulate an idea, a function, into some little compact unit, and then call it later when you want to use it. Okay, so let's see, what questions are there? How are we doing chat-wise? Any questions that have been popping up?
Yeah, we've got some fun so far, and Willow and Rad have been jumping in and answering a lot of those, so that's awesome. And keep the questions coming. I'm about to answer Ashley's question, but I bet Willow or Rad will beat me to it. So okay. I left it hang in there.
Awesome.
But go ahead, Willow and Rad, jump in. I bet you guys can get that one. But these are great. I mean, because these questions are the key to everything in terms of learning how to actually do this. Like there's no question at all. It's really true in this case. That's a dumb question. I mean, you have to ask these questions, because in a way, the thing I like about this is that the computer itself is actually a very dumb instrument. It's like a hammer, or a screwdriver. You can't necessarily say, tell the screwdriver to do something like, screwdriver, please, screw these screws in for me while I go and sangria or something like that. And the computer is actually the same way. The computer, if you tell the computer, computer, make me beautiful today or something, doesn't know what the hell that is. So like, you can tell a computer a series of very literal things, and that if you string them together in a program, it can kind of make those things appear as if it's doing something that it's really kind of not, if you look at the way a computer actually works. So yeah, so anyway, so understanding that like, what does a dot do, or what does an equal sign do, or what does a quotation mark do, that's actually the way computers work. So the more you ask those kinds of questions, the more you're going to understand computers and programming. So these are great. So please keep asking every single question that comes to mind.
Yep.
If something doesn't make sense, ask us. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So yeah, and a couple things that that I see there just at the end that came up. You read through the chat as we're talking along, because a lot of those the answers are going to be really useful and may answer things more clearly than I or whoever's talking are answering it. But one thing that came up, is that there's this. So in the function, when you're defining it, so the key things are, there's a name that's going to be used later to call the function. There's the parentheses. And any sort of parameters that are inside of that you want to pass information to the function. So that's why down here, add things 10 and 3, we wanted to pass it numbers that it's going to add. Yep. So that all the stuff that you want to pass to a function happens in here, and there could be no things. A function can just do its thing without anything coming into it, or there could be any number of things. Although typically you don't want to have a whole bunch of things that get passed to a function just because it gets sort of unwieldy. But typically having 0 to 3 things is pretty common to pass to functions. More on some things, but and then after that you have these curly braces, which are the right here. Everything inside of that is the main code block that's going to be executed when that function is called. So all those, whatever is in here, however many lines of code, you could have a function that's 20 lines long, 100 lines long, or it could just be a single 1 or 2 lines. The key idea is it's something that you want to be able to encapsulate because you're going to do it again and again, or it's sort of complex to do. And then it will be executable in, as we would call, like a modular fashion. It's this little module that then you can talk to later and reuse. So yeah, that's great. And there are, just a reminder, on this, there's this EMDA coding basics, which is a great place to sort of review some of the things that we just talked about. It steps through all the discussion of variables that we had. It does talk about functions, and so that information that we just were covering is there with some pretty similar sort of structures for things. We'll be revisiting functions in future weeks as well. And yeah, some other information there that will be useful as you go forward. So
I really, again, just to reiterate, yeah, go ahead and review the stuff that we about. I mean, David really did a lot of stuff on us, actually. I mean, so it might seem basic, but in a way, it's really not basic at all. And you're going to get familiar with it by just practicing and practicing and practicing. So bust through the code pen stuff, and you might do it all and not understand anything you did.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's actually pretty common. I have that experience a lot when I'm learning something new. So, once you do it, you go back and try to play with it as much as you can. It's actually kind of fun. Like David was showing us, just goofing around with it. It's one of the best ways to learn it and see if you actually, it's a great way to test your understanding. So if you think, well, can I write a function? That was a huge, huge, huge step for me personally when I was learning how to do this stuff. Because someone might say, when someone knows what they're doing, they're like, yeah, function this, function that, variable this, variable that. And you're like, okay, cool. But when you're by yourself, can you actually make those things work the way that you think they do? That's the way to test it. And when you run into problems with that, or it doesn't work the way you think it does, that's the perfect time to drop it on the Discord, and then you'll get help. Either one of us will pick it up, and but usually someone else will pick it up, so it's great. This is exciting. Actually, I'm really stoked because this coronavirus thing, I was thinking about it, if this happened when, David and I were in college, I guess they would have just said, okay, everybody go home and dig a hole and kind of just sit in that hole for a while. But since we've got these computer things, we're able to have these conversations right now. And these conversations are happening because, some troll-like people just did a lot of this kind of coding stuff. And then all of a sudden we have video and pictures and voice and text and all these things going on, but it's all happening through code. So we're excited that you guys are getting a chance to kind of get familiar with this.
Yeah, great. And so you'll just reiterate on what we're asking you to do for this week. On the Moodle page, go under week 1. Someone just asked about the lectures, which will get posted here under this week 1 coding videos and tutorials. Then work your way through those CodePen tutorials or CodePen code basics 1.1 through 1.9. You remember you'll go into CodePen, fork it, which creates your own version, make all the code that we're asking you to do, save it, take the link and upload that to each of these assignments, and you should be good to go. The only other thing to do is to go ahead and take the Hello, Who Are You entrance survey that we have at the top there. We will be posting the video to here, and there's a question following on about the chats. We'll make sure that either the chat that goes along with this is, if it's not saved on the recording of the video, I'll
I just
log the
saved
chat.
it.
Okay, great, and then we can have it up as a text file in that same area as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some.
And then
good answers.
one of the questions that just came up was, just so everyone might as well hear this, is that one of the questions was, do we have to have all of the code pen basics for this week done before lab? And what would you say,
Nope.
Dr. Bethel?
Nope.
No.
So
You heard it here.
No.
Yeah, but
The answer is no.
yeah. But if you have a chance, it would be great to have started to work through some of those, because you're likely won't know what type of questions you have, or what you we won't know what you don't know until you started to work through those a little bit. So it'd be great to at least look at them. All of these are we're doing it so that all assignments are going to be due on Sunday nights. So you'll have all week long to work on it, and then just make sure that everything's done before Sunday night, because then the next Monday morning we'll be moving on to new material in the lectures. So the goal is kind of like Mondays we introduce the topics. You start working on it on your own. Wednesday, during those Zoom help sessions, we're going to be there to answer questions and work through stuff with you individually. In other times, you'll be able to connect in with Rad and Willow, as well as the three of us, as well as things come up, and answer questions. And then you have until Sunday night to complete that, and then start fresh next week. Okay. Well, I think we're going to probably start signing off here. I'll stop the recording in just a second.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was thinking, David, let's leave the meeting on for a while, and then people can, once we sign off, we can sign off, and so people can start to leave the meeting. But we'll keep it on so we can kind of stay. We can stay on the text chat and on the video too if people have questions.
Good. Yep. And this link will, if it continues to work as well as it seemed to work today, we'll keep using the same like persistent Zoom room for all of the meetings on Mondays. It'll be a separate link that you'll follow to find your lab sections on Wednesday.
So actually, David, maybe before we sign off, let's just hit let's just maybe look at the last chat messages here that are coming up, and we can just get them for everybody. So one of them is, are these chats in Q&A going to be viewable in the video recording later as well? And I think we said yes.
We hope so. If not, we'll keep them saved.
And they'll be available via Moodle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the plan is to post them to Moodle. So Moodle will be kind of the clearinghouse for all of our materials that we're generating. And then the last thing was, that's where the lecture will be posted. And then will every tutorial be on Moodle? Yes. So all of the tutorial material we do will be available on Moodle. Cool. Are we doing most of these projects on our own, or are there some group projects? So yeah, at this point, we're planning on most of these being doing them solo. Traditionally, over the years, we've always done a collaborative project, and so we might end up, I don't know, we'll keep that door open as a possibility, just because this is coming up in one of the classes I teach. The upper division class is the design, collaboration, communication class. Oh, that's my phone. Design, collaboration, communication is, we do so much of our collaborating over video anyway, so remotely. So this might be a good chance to actually do that. So yeah. Anything else here?
Yeah, no, I think that's good, and I think the Moodle. There's some questions related to that. I think.
Yeah, documents like a glossary. So I think we have a glossary on here, don't we, David? Started
Yes.
on the 203
Yep.
Moodle site, I believe.
It's down a little ways right now, but yep. Here under libraries and additional resources,
Sorry,
Moodle
my
page.
audio was being funny here.
There is a glossary, and it has a good start of things. Okay, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and end our recording.